All right, hello, welcome to the 2018. Oh, hold on. Actually, you know what? Let's stop that. I'm gonna do it again. It's been a while. Because I was gonna record the audio for everyone to spread around if they felt like it. So let's try that again. Second verse, same as the first.
Bobby, your audio's crap.
My audio's crap? Is that what people are saying?
That's what I'm hearing, and it's like everybody else is too.
Yeah, I know, I'm hearing it as well.
Uh-oh.
It just sounds like everyone on the call.
Yeah, we all artifacting?
I think Discord is having another one of its issues. It's one of its meltdowns.
I don't
everybody
see
clear with the
anybody
exception of
else
Bobby.
but Bobby.
It's better now.
Yeah, mine just fixed itself.
All right, am I still somewhat normal?
Well,
You are the
I'm not
most
sure that I
normal
would call it
one
that.
here.
Aw, thanks, sweetie.
I'm doing a bit.
Somebody hired some technomasters.
All right, the chat room, tell me, everything sounds fine now? Oz says everyone sounds fine.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, if all else fails, as long as you guys sound fine to me, then at least we'll have podcast audio. Okay, let's try that again.
That doesn't just come and go throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. But here we go. Hitting the stinger. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Shadowrun Podcasters 2018 year-end roundtable. And here we go. You guys can't hear it, my co-host, because we had to change some things around, but I'm playing the Nick Arcade theme right now. I don't know why. I just found out really fast. My name is Bobby. I'm going to be one of your many hosts and guests around here tonight. I've got Cliff with me tonight, Mr. Johnson of the Arcology podcast, and a bunch of other people. And we're going to talk to you guys about Shadowrun content creation. We call it a podcasters thing, but we're so much more than that now. And I think we have just so much to offer. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, like I said, my name's Bobby Frankenberger. I'm the creator of the Complex Action YouTube channel, and I've got a bunch of other things I do. I'm going to go around the table here and introduce some people. First up, we're going to talk a little bit about each of your projects in turn as the thing goes on. But I just want to mention everybody's name. We've got Paul Greenleaf from Sonic Realms. Hello, Paul.
Hey, everybody.
And we've got Blair Britt from NeoScum.
Hey, Bobby, how's it going?
And Cassie Levett from the EmeraldGrid.
Greetings.
And Opti from the Neo-Anarchist podcast.
Hey.
And Wolf from Deniable Assets. How's it going, Wolf?
Hello, everyone.
Jesus from Lowcountry Shadows.
Hello.
Joules, aka Rainbowsmite, you might know her that way, is from Seize the GM. Hello, Joules.
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Mr. Johnson, I've already introduced from the Arcology podcast, and as I said, my name's Bobby Frankenberger, and we're going to be talking about some Shadowrun tonight. I'm really glad to do this every single year. It's something that, it's a tradition of ours here that started before even I came around, and I was really excited several years ago to become a part of it for the first time, and then even more excited the year after that I was asked to, honored really, to host it this time, and one thing that's
Saddled with.
yeah.
right. Cliff and I are like, yeah. Why don't you take the honor of hosting this, Bobby? What a maroon.
Right.
I mean, good job, man. Thanks.
Yeah, but I do enjoy it. I love it every year, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. That's something I wanted to talk about right at the beginning, is that Shadowrun fan content has really exploded this year, and I think we actually say that every year, and really it's not fair that we've short, like it really has, I think, more than doubled. In fact, this is the first time this year we had to change the format of everything, split it up into 2 parts. This is the first part because there's just so many people. We had to put all these restrictions. Like, okay, it used to just be, hey, everybody who makes some stuff, come on, and we're just gonna sit down and have fun. And now we're like, okay, well, each show we just need 1 representative, and we're gonna split it up into 2 groups. There's just so much cool stuff happening, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys. So
It used to be like the family was like, getting together for dinner, and now it's like, oh, there's like cousins that I've never met before.
Right.
And it's just like a huge family reunion type.
Yeah, Go ahead, Cliff.
I think every year we do this, I'm blown away by how many more people are now doing really cool stuff.
Yeah, and not just blown away by all the cool stuff that people are doing, but quite jealous of all the cool stuff people are doing. Like, seriously, I find out all the things that everybody's doing, and I get it. I mean, really, like, I guess the thing you're supposed to say to validate yourself is that you guys all push me to be a better content creator, but really you just make me want to give up. A lot of people. One person in particular who does that is the first person I want to talk to tonight. And feel free, by the way, as we're talking, to all just freely join in the discussion. I'm not being too strict. I'll push us on when we need to be on time. But Paul Greenleaf of Sonic Realms, seriously, I got a chance to meet this guy for the first time at Gen Con 2018, and the stuff that this guy does is really good. So Sonic Realms podcast, why don't you tell me a little bit, or tell everybody here who might not know, just really briefly what it is that the Sonic Realms podcast is.
Sure. Well, here's the elevator pitch. I record people playing role-play games. The podcast is Shadowrun, of course. And I have them play in character, then later on take that audio and edit out all the dice rolls, rule checks, everything but the organically developing story. Then add in sound effects, a cinematic score, and a full cast. So it sounds like you're listening to a movie unfold, but you as the listener know that behind the scenes there were dice being rolled, consequences, risks, and because it's not a written audio drama kind of thing, there's no 3-act structure for anyone to adhere to. Sometimes things just don't work out, and we get to follow along on these players' journeys.
Yeah, one thing that I learned about just recently that I thought was really amazing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have like 2-hour sessions that you take, and they come down to like some 15, 20, 25-minute episodes that you get them down to, right?
Yep, that's correct.
I find that intensely amazing because I used to have an actual play that I did, and I really struggled to get those episodes down, just cutting all the stuff out, and I felt like I guess maybe I didn't have an ear for what to throw out. like how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had to do that recently, actually, for the newest episode. My biggest nightmare is when the players plan things.
Oh boy.
Because they often will say something in character like, well, what do you think about this? Then out of character, they'll say, oh, but wait, can we do that? What's the rules for that? And then we discuss it for a while. And then they say, okay, yeah, we can do that. Okay, so should we do this? And they start talking about it out of character, and then they come back into character. So I need to do this like beautiful mind like stitch work on the wall with lines of dialogue and like red strings going to each one.
Right.
It's a nightmare, but most of it is searching through the rule book. Cut that right out, and the dice.
I guess if you cut out rules discussions in Shadowrun, you're probably cutting out a lot of audio content. The Lowcountry Shadows is how much rules chatter do you guys keep in?
There's it so it kind of changed because there was a time where the guy who was editing the podcast had a lot more time to edit, and we had a lot less in there then, but now I think we have quite a bit that makes it through, but he still tries to cut out like the really long parts.
Yeah. The thing that I always found difficult when I was doing mine was just I don't know. When I was record stuff, I would get there was like a up and down cycle I would go through when I was cutting stuff out, and it would have to do with whether I became fatigued with the type of content that, like the tone that was happening, because Shadowrun can be really, really dark. But NeoScum, Blair, you guys, something I really appreciate about what you guys do is that it's really great when a show can like bring sort of levity to the setting. You know what I mean? Like really brighten it up. And you guys, it's a really funny show. So do you?
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So do you is that just because you guys that's what you do, or is that a goal that you set out to at the beginning, or is that just come naturally to you?
I think it's a little bit of both. Pretty much all of us on the podcast are comedians, but we kind of like after playing the game for a little while fell into like a very natural rhythm of like sort of pushing our character storylines while also simultaneously like kind of messing with each other. And sometimes I like to think about our podcast sort of as like Sonic Realms sort of takes out some of the at the table dialogue, but we kind of have almost like two chunks to our podcast, which is the story that's evolving when we're talking in character, right, and then kind of just like the sort of like at the table conversations happening between us as like actual people. I think we like our particular take on that like type of actual play is just sort of bouncing between those two, and especially when sometimes you'll just get like a great character line will come out of a random banter session, or something will make just like a throwaway joke in the middle of what would otherwise be a relatively like tense or serious moment, which can lead to a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's one of the key skills I think I learned when I started running games. I actually learned it from the other guy on here, Mr. Johnson. He's got an actual play. Everybody here, it's like almost everybody here has an actual play. That's the thing to do, right? Those are the most fun. You get to actually play the game while you're making content. But I want to make sure that I don't forget to do this. So I'm trying to do it as we go, and I already forgot with Paul. But I want to make sure that I let everybody know where they can find your stuff if they're interested in it. First of all, Paul, you told us about Sonic Realms and what it was, but you can find Sonic Realms on Twitter at Sonic_Realms. What the website is SonicRealmsPodcast.com. And you can Sonic Realms podcast on Facebook and Instagram. It's all over the place, right?
Yeah, I should have just taken sonicrealms.net. I just had to go for that .com, but Sonic Realms is taken by a Sonic the Hedgehog mod group.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Dude, that's life. That's like life in a nutshell right there.
We wanted Shadowcasters.com. Who's calling us? Somebody's calling me.
We have our first caller.
Where is that coming from? Oh, I know what that is, I think. Let me. How fun, guys! Professionals here. Decline. It's the second group. Who knew that we're going to be having? Who knew that they would be calling? Anyway, NeoScum is at NeoScum on Twitter and Facebook, right? Or you guys have a Facebook page? I was looking for. You have a group, I know, over there. Started by somebody.
I am not on Facebook, so I have no idea. But we do have a Twitter and an Instagram, and they're both at NeoScum. And then we also have a website, which is just www.neoscum.com.
You know what I love? I went onto the NeoScum website today, and it's really fun just looking around on the website, because you guys have like a bunch of fun little like a soundboard of audio clips on there. And it's hilarious just clicking on this. So.
Oh yeah, we one of our fans made that. I can't remember his name, but a fan put the whole thing together and just grabbed a bunch of the clips from our podcast. So you can just make your own NeoScum podcast now.
Yeah, and I saw on there the predictive text like script that was made, and you guys. So tell me about that. I was really curious about that. Was that something that somebody just threw together and then showed to you guys, and then you decided to do something with it?
So a really good friend of our podcast is this guy, Jonah Cooper, and he works with this group called Botneck Studios. And what they do is they create like predictive keyboards using inputs from like various texts. So essentially we have like transcriptions of the podcast, and so he fed that into a predictive keyboard and then created his own like NeoScum episode just using this like one predictive thing. But yeah, it's that company's really cool. They have a ton of different stuff, and they started doing music videos this past year. So they'll like take a famous like singer, feed a bunch of the songs into the whole thing, and then like pump out a bunch of fake, Billy Joel songs or stuff like that.
That's very funny. That's really funny. Yeah. But yeah, you should go to neoscum.com and there's stuff to do on there. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to click on.
Yeah, so not exactly podcasts, but Cassie, everyone knows what Cassie does because we're always talking about the EmeraldGrid. But why don't you, for those who don't know, tell them what the EmeraldGrid is.
The EmeraldGrid is a one-shot Shadowrun community. It's based on Reddit, and then we make a bunch of stuff anymore. Like I've made 2 character sheets for Roll20 for Shadowrun Anarchy and Shadowrun 5th edition, and then we did commission lots of art and stuff like that and assets for Roll20. So that's particularly what we do. And we do Twitch streams.
Yes, of course.
We are playing. Yeah, we're playing Serrated Edge right now every Friday as soon as I get back from South America.
That's awesome. So Cassie, also, I looked to make sure to see if we could get away with talking about it, but Cassie also was famously my co-host. I like to say that, famously my co-host on the Sixth World podcast. What'd you say?
I don't bring that up anymore.
Well, I know you might be embarrassed about it, but I'm not.
No, I'm not embarrassed. It's just dead, Bobby.
I know.
We still get likes on Facebook.
But the only reason we do still get likes on, and Facebook's always reminding me that we don't make any posts on that page. They're like, hey, hey Bobby, some odd number of people who liked your page haven't gotten an update from you in a while. Maybe you ought to do something about that. And I'm like, come on,
you just
Dad,
start again, but we just do it like
old
quarterly
man.
or something.
Yeah, we've talked about doing that with new books that come out. But the only reason I bring it up is because I was surprised that we ended that in February. If we're looking back at 2018, it was a thing that happened. So
yep.
So
yes, the death of our previously loved podcast.
Good vibes, everybody. Year. Positive thing happened. We ended that podcast in 2018.
Positive that we ended.
What would you do a lot of time? You spent a lot of time thinking about Shadowrun, and like I said, if we are looking back on 2018, what would you say, Cassie, is the big takeaway, the 2018 takeaway of Shadowrun? Like, what if we give every year in Shadowrun a theme? What would you say 2018's theme is?
For Shadowrun as a whole?
Sure.
All of Shadowrun?
Yeah, this is a very broadly defined question, so just go for it.
I'll throw back in your guys' court. Accessible now. I think the Shadowcasters Network has made it a lot easier for all the random actual plays and podcasters and whatnot to have a place to advertise their product and get together and talk about it and find viewers, right? So, accessible.
Thanks. Yeah, it is accessible. I hope. Well, we try to make the rules more accessible, but that's always a challenge.
Oh, I don't know if you could do that. No. Let's make the people in the community more accessible. Let's not try to.
Yeah. Well, how
many videos do you have now? In your tutorials.
My GM screen videos that you're talking about, I've got almost 100. I've got 97, or I'm working on 97. I've been working on 97 for 2 months.
In just a simple 100 videos, you'll be ready.
Yeah, and people are still those are just the weird outside of the box rules. That's not even the mainline rules, right? So it's just a short 18 hours of video. You can become a Shadowrun expert. I'm not. Yeah, my Sisyphean boulder that I keep rolling up the hill. I
feel ya.
Opti, let's speaking of Shadowrun in the past year and things to get excited about. Opti.
Yeah, I put out some podcasts a few times this year.
Put a couple of podcast episodes out. No, I want you to talk about your podcast, but I was in particularly referring to some of the books that have been coming out that seem to be pointing Shadowrun in a direction of like less corporate focused and more, I don't know,
Neo-Anarchist focused.
Neo-Anarchist focused.
I wonder how that happened.
Right. I wonder how it happened. So you've got to be excited about, for example, the most recent release in November, Better Than Bad, having wrote some of that, and that's kind of like your baby that you nourished and brought to life, isn't it?
Yes, Better Than Bad suckled at my teat for a very long time, indeed. I mean, I obviously am not the line developer, so I can't take all credit for that, but that was the first conversation that I ever had with Jason Hardy once I was a freelancer, and it was like, hey, we've got to do this book, and he said, cool, let's do it. And then that was, I don't know, 3 years ago. So
right,
that was, yeah, it happened. It eventually happened, and I love it. I think it came together really great, and you know, there's some editing stuff that I wish I could have gone back and done differently, but I mean,
sure.
Again, I think the people that want the book, the people that love the book, will find what they like and love, and that's fine. It's easy enough to fix what you don't like.
Right, and of course, Neo-Anarchy is not a new thing for you. So for those who don't know, Opti, as I've mentioned right at the top, is the host of and creator and voice and everything of the Neo-Anarchist podcast. So how would you, I always try to describe this podcast, and I don't think it's hard to describe, but I don't feel like any of my descriptions ever give it the justice that it's. How do you describe this podcast?
I would say that the Neo-Anarchist podcast is an in-character history of the Shadowrun universe.
Okay, so I nailed it. Never mind.
Yeah, you did good, man.
But yeah, it's everybody loves it. Anybody who ever wants to know about the lore and history of Shadowrun, dating since the very beginning. They always point to Opti's podcast. So if you haven't listened to it, it's neo-anarchist.com. You can find him on any of the things. iTunes, just type in Neo-Anarchist podcast, and you'll find it.
Or on the Facebooks, on the Twitters. Yeah.
Right.
We have a couple. A new podcast that I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or not, but we just, recently this week launched an actual play, which I'm pretty excited about as well.
Yes, I do want you to mention that. So hold that for just a minute, because one thing I wanted to ask is what, going back to real fast, I'm going to get to the rest of you, but going back to Blair and NeoScum, what, when is that set? Do you guys have any defined time year setting for it, or is it just generally Shadowrun?
I think we say 2077, but I would say we're essentially using like Shadowrun mechanics mapped on top of a world that our GM Gannon has sort of crafted himself. I mean, obviously he's pulling from the source material, but he also is Gannon's a huge fan of death metal and just loves sort of blending all sorts of different kind of brutal post-apocalyptic themes in there. So we definitely go off the the normal path, I think, on a pretty regular basis.
Right.
But yeah, 2077 is what we always jokingly say the year is when we're talking about that.
Sure. And the reason I ask is because I think I'd heard 2077, but part of me when I listened to NeoScum, it has that old school Shadowrun feel to it, and that's why I was asking that. But speaking of old school Shadowrun feel, I'll kick it back to you, Opti. What is it? What do you have? Is there a project that you might be working on? I heard moments ago that you might be working on something.
Are you talking about the brand new actual play podcast that just came out?
Yes, I am. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we have a brand new actual play podcast that just came out. It is called, the long version is the Neo-Anarchist podcast presents Shadowrun Origins, but we just call it Shadowrun Origins because that's just too much of a mouthful to say over and over. Shadowrun Origins, and it's set in the 2050s,
right? Actually,
and it's the point of it is going through all of the kind of golden age modules, those old adventures, that kind of framed and formed the golden age of Shadowrun.
Sure. So sort of like the perfect marriage between what the Neo-Anarchist podcast proper does with history and everything, and also Shadowrun actual play. It's like you're mixing those together, right?
Yes, and once upon a time, somebody told me that if you can make all of your spheres of influence kind of merge together so that you can just do one thing over and over and over again and hit multiple areas of influence, do that. So the main character is Opti, and so I just get to keep playing that same character over and over and over again. And so, but like again, like this is a really cool thing. Different actual plays have different focuses. And I would say like the overall the theme that's developed in Shadowrun Origins as we've been playing it, we've got quite a few episodes under our belt. But the theme that's developing there is family, right? Like this really does feel like these characters are growing together. They have a heart, like they're trying their best and they're failing really hard, but like they're just decent people in a crappy world, and they're just trying to get by and do the best they can. And so I'm really finding that these characters are great. So just let me pump it real quick. Yeah. Cliff, otherwise known as Mr. Johnson. I did it. Yeah, Bobby didn't even do it. I called you Cliff. Anyway, Mr. Johnson is our default GM for that. And what that means is that he kind of introduces everything. He's kind of set us up with the rules for playing 5th edition in 2050. And he's kind of our GM by default. But we have invited different people who are influential in Shadowrun to come and be guest GMs for the different runs that we're doing. So, for example, there's a run in the Universal Brotherhood book that we just finished up. It's called Missing Blood. And we got Bull, Stephen Rakovich, to come and run that one for us. And then we have RJ Thomas, who's also a Shadowrun author. He's going to come in and run Missing Blood. We got Rusty Zimmerman coming in, and he's going to run Elven Fire. So like it's a really cool group of people that are going to come in with Mr. Johnson as the GM and sometimes player. And we got a couple of folks from Deniable Assets, Wolf and Enigma from the Deniable Assets. They're playing characters. So I mean, it's a really cool thing. It's bringing in podcaster family members and keeping it real. Yeah. So it's pretty awesome. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I love it when we can collaborate and help each other out. Speaking of Deniable Assets, Wolf, we haven't heard from you at all, really. Tell us about Deniable Assets and what it is, because it's a little bit different than anything else that we've mentioned so far.
Well, Deniable Assets is kind of an in-character informational podcast that doesn't really deal with the history like Opti's, but more deals with being a runner and kind of the ins and outs of being a Shadowrunner, what it's like in the life, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so and that's really cool. It's sort of like reminds me, if any of you listen to some old Arcology podcast episodes when I did or the way that you describe it anyway, reminds me of when I used to do those little audio bits for the Arcology podcast before I even started doing anything else, of like of Dear Handy, where he's an in-character person giving advice. Now, this isn't my advice; was intentionally nonsensical advice that was just meant to be funny. But you're giving you're giving a fun sort of in-character advice thing, but it's the conceit is that it's in character, right? Like you're telling it from within the world. So
yeah, that we're telling it somewhere in the Seattle sprawl in a undisclosed location. We're trying to teach people how to stick it to the man and stay alive and be well paid. We also have a second part to that, which is our Tales, which is all audio dramas of the trials and tribulations of Wolf and Mr. Clean and all of the crazy dreck that they get into.
Yeah, so that's exciting, and people can find that on Facebook at Deniable Assets, or how would they find the podcast itself?
It's deniableassets.podbean.com, or it's on iTunes, we're on Stitcher. If there's any other podcast services that I'm missing, just send me a message on Facebook. We'll get on there pretty soon.
Yeah, that can be a nightmare that podcasters loathe is all the different ones that you have to juggle and all the stupid things you have to do to get onto them. Like
Pro
Stitcher.
tip: Libsyn does a lot of that for you.
Yes, it does. And Libsyn does do a lot of that for you. Stitcher is annoying. Who else here hates Stitcher? Sorry if anybody is a really
I've
big
literally
Stitcher.
never heard of that. Am I?
What happened to that positivity, Bobby? Come on.
Sorry. They just.
I don't know. I'll complain with
Biggest
you. It was a
pain in the
royal
tushy
pain to
tush.
get on there.
Well, they annoyed me. I found out not too long ago that they do some shady stuff with your audio and compress it down, and it made me real mad. Anyway, so Jesus, Lowcountry Shadows, you have a show that is very near and dear to my heart. I will let you describe to everybody what it was, and then I will tell you why I love Lowcountry Shadows.
So Lowcountry Shadows is a show set in South Carolina, Charleston to be specific. And did you want me to say why it was that you like it, or did you?
Go for it. Go for it. I'll elaborate. I'm not just gonna. I've been talking a lot, so feel free.
So the GM of the podcast actually was inspired by Bobby's Complex Action podcast, and so he kind of set a world adjacent to the Complex Action. And so one of the main antagonists from Complex Action is actually a recurring antagonist in Lowcountry Shadows, which is the Knights of the Confederacy.
Yeah. Knights of the Confederacy.
Oh, I hate those guys.
Yeah,
I hope you set them on fire often.
Mr. Johnson was on my actual play, as was Cassie, so they're familiar.
Yes, as long as you don't run into any plant spirits, right?
Right. Hey-o. But no, Scott contacted me while I was doing because my actual play that I did back in the day was set in Columbia, South Carolina. I was like, I'm going to build this world, and nobody knows anything about South Carolina, and that's where I'm from. So I did that, and Scott contacted me in the middle of me doing that and said, hey, I'm from Charleston. We have some mutual friends, Scott and I. I'm from Charleston, which is actually where I grew up in Charleston. And he said, I want to do one too. And I'd love to also do a thing where I think Charleston offers a lot of cool things that you could do and explore what it's like in the Sixth World with just the really unique history that's there. And we talked a bunch back and forth and shared ideas, and then he went. So I sort of feel like I have a very spiritual connection to Lowcountry
It's like your little brother, right?
Yeah. The one that the little brother that kept on going and decided not to give up like I did. The Seize the GM is I think one of the last things that we are yet to talk about. Joules, Rainbowsmite over there with that cute little spider on her head, is a co-host to Seize the GM podcast, which is it's not exclusively about Shadowrun, but it's sort of like Shadowrun. It's tangentially about Shadowrun at least.
Well, we actually all started working together because we did an actual play with Opti way back in the day. So it's Zendead and all operations, Garde-Manger, and myself. And the thing is like when you want to play any games, everyone wants to play, no one wants to run. And half the time it's because they're not used to it, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're scared or something like that. And we realized that's a problem not exclusive to Shadowrun or anything. So Zen got the idea of, okay, why don't we just give tips, tricks for people that have never run, or veterans that have maybe, figure out some stuff. So we all got together, and since we've all run different games, I love playing Shadowrun. I stink at running it. But turns out I am really horrible, evil, and nasty when I run horror games. I've made people, do the shirt over the face thing. So
Right.
But so we decided, hey, you know what? Let's give tips and tricks, and a lot of it can be put not just to Shadowrun, but to D&D, and a lot of it is, what are the types of players? How do you choose what you're going to run? So if you've got a whole bunch of straight samurai, I don't think everyone and their brother really wants to do a really deep political intrigue bit. If we all want to kill crap, it's like, no, let's pink mohawk this and just blow everything up and see how big the explosion can get.
That's my favorite game.
Oh, it's so fun. But the other one, it's not, goodbye, Lucas. But but the thing is, you know, a lot of people have this idea that running a game, it's not stereotypical for us, but we just kind of go, I don't want to run it, but fine. You know, we want people to get kind of excited about running it. If you get a basic idea, it's like, because then it affects your players, and your players might get an idea to run something. So
yeah.
And that's important, because if everyone's a player, no one's a GM, the games are going to die. So you have to get people that want to run it. So we have everything on how to run a game in a convention, what makes things different, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's always good to encourage people to GM. I think I've always felt like there's this weird relationship between GMs and players that shouldn't, like, this weird barrier and
almost adversarial kind of thing.
I was gonna say, like, this weird antagonism.
Yeah, we try, at least with us, for like, yes, there are certain games where it's you're supposed to be antagonistic, you know, like Hackmaster or something. But the thing is, and one of the big things you put is like, everyone's there to have fun. If someone's just having an off day, okay, how do we handle it? We also put in important things that everybody forgets is you got to take care of yourself. So GM self-care. So what if you're running a game and you start to burn out a little bit? So, and that can actually give to the adversarial. It's like, I'm going to kill everyone in the party.
Right.
Which can be fun if that's kind of what you're planning. Just the important thing is that you have to be able to draw on the players. And sometimes you find that there's a player that is going to go off and do their own thing, or screw the pooch, as it was, you know, and you got to figure out sometimes why. Are they just an asshole? Which can be a possibility. But sometimes it's like, what if they're going through something in their personal life and it's affecting the game? It's like, all right, why don't we, it's like, all right, board games for 2 weeks, and then we'll run a one-shot module in a complete different thing and see if it fixes it.
Yeah,
because
definitely. And
I had one game I ran, and it killed me running Shadowrun for the longest time. I didn't run it for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
It was that bad. I had a player still loved the game, still loved playing it. I would not run it because everything I did, he was rules monkeying it, and then it was just that kind of stuff. And you don't want that, you know. That's something that I found out is Shadowrun is what brought me to my family, you know, and it's kind of awesome because these are people I'm like, you are my people.
Right, yeah.
If I wasn't lucky enough to kind of get back into it, you know, to get over that hatred of running it, you know, who knows, I might have missed out on all that. And that's something you don't want to do to anyone. So if, you know, you don't want to destroy a genre for somebody. Imagine like a first person playing Shadowrun and they're in like a convention group and you got a jerkwad that's ruined the experience for everyone.
Right. Yeah, and I agree I totally get behind that mission of encouraging people to GM, and so that's what you're doing there. That's Seize the GM, right? And that's
big old fissy.
Facebook and Twitter both Seize the GM, and I'm assuming you can just find Seize the GM on.
Yep, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we've got a Facebook group. You can hang out and drop GM tips. And one thing we try and do in every episode, we drop what are called stat blocks. These are things we come up with that you can grab and kind of, they're artifacts, NPCs, weird adventure things, locations you can grab. If you're having a creative block, drag and drop most of them. Some of them, if you're in a fantasy setting, you're not going to have like the super uber gun Uzi of Doom, but you know, like the fabric tears in reality that destroy fate. Yeah, that could work almost anywhere.
Right. The I did it again. Lowcountry Shadows you can find at Lowcountry Shadows everywhere on Twitter and Facebook. That's where you're finding them, right? And yes. iTunes and all that stuff, and Deniable Assets as well. I think I did say about Deniable Assets. I got a question for you, Blair. Is this your first intro into Shadowrun? This is playing this NeoScum game, or do you have a history with Shadowrun?
So no, this is like the first like long form campaign I've really done. I played like a few like sessions of D&D here and there, and then what's funny is actually Mike Migdal and Casey Tony and Gannon Reedy used to live together, and would run Shadowrun sessions out of their house. and you could tell that they were in like an experimental sort of like phase, because they would literally just invite just like so many people over.
Yeah.
And we had one where we were playing we were trying to do a campaign, and I think there were 8 people playing Shadowrun at the same time, and it was like the biggest mess I'd ever seen. And it was like a 3 or 4 hour session. People were just like straight up like in the middle of combat being like, I have to go home, and like taking their stuff. And we were just like, yeah, I guess that character gets shot in the head, or we don't know what happens. But yeah, so this is definitely my first experience, and this is even like with the same group that I like did that initial sort of like entrance to it. Although it is funny because this obviously has almost nothing to do with actual tabletop role playing, but I played the Shadowrun games because my brother got me into them like years before I'd ever considered playing the tabletop version.
Which games was it? The more recent PC games or
yeah, the more recent ones on Steam, essentially.
Really good. Those are good.
Yeah, I mean they're essentially XCOM, which I already love, on top of like adding fantasy setting stuff on top of it, which is great.
Right. Yeah. They're really, really good. I think they won a bunch of awards. So definitely, I enjoyed those as well. It's obvious that the people on NeoScum have a lot of chemistry. Have you guys been doing stuff together for a long time outside of this?
We not necessarily. This like particular group doesn't have like that chemistry. Like Mike, Casey, and Gannon used to live together, so they have sort of like an easy rapport between them.
Sure.
And Mike and I did comedy together probably 2 years before that, but that wasn't really like in a tabletop setting. It was just like both playing on the same team around Chicago. But yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why we sort of decided to start taking it more seriously, was that we noticed that we were like creating stuff that we enjoyed to listening to, but also like it felt fun in the moment. And I think like kind of what Joules was saying, like something really important for us, and I think just important in general, is like if you're not having fun, if it starts to feel like a slog, that's where it's like it's brutal, because it's like it's really hard to like you get into like hour 2 of running through a building or whatever you're doing, like it can get like pretty tough to like stay engaged and make people feel like they're having a good time.
Yeah, especially I know a lot of us here when we came up with our idea for a show or a group, or it could be an actual play or just a gaming group in general. You came up with the idea for a game you want to run, and you don't have any players, and you're just trying to find people, and you're trying to invent. Like you're hoping you get that chemistry with a bunch of strangers that you pull together, and that any of you guys any of you guys? I know Mr. Johnson there. We haven't really jumped into the Arcology podcast yet, but you guys, when you started the Arcology podcast actual play, that was literally a bunch of strangers that you just found on a forum, right?
Yeah, the Shadowrun.com, which went down this last year. Had some forums on there, and I just put out a call for, hey, I want to do this actual play podcast thing. Who wants to do it with me? Let's do some Shadowrun. I got a pretty good bunch of people from that. Not everyone who originally stepped up in that stuck around for the long haul, but most of them have. And they're good long-term friends, and I brought in some of my older friends in it as well. But yeah, I found Maverick, Kenji, Tiny, or Doc, depending what phase you're in of the actual play. Those all came from just random forum post. Hey, who wants to do a Shadowrun podcast with me?
Right. Yeah. No, it's easy for me to take for granted that everybody would know about the Arcology podcast, but we've got a bunch of different people here together from a bunch of different worlds. So I want to make sure that that everybody hears the Arcology podcast. I mean, you say it in the introduction to your show. It's the perfect description. It's just a Shadowrun community podcast, right? Tell people about it. Wrong push to talk button.
Oh, damn it. I recently changed the Discord, but yeah. It's a podcast. It's about all things Shadowrun. We mostly focus on the tabletop aspect of it. And we have probably the longest running Shadowrun actual play podcast on the main. It's certainly the longest running one that I've ever played or run. Long run actual play that people seem to like listening to.
Are you at 200 episodes now?
I think we're past that, 200. over something. I forget.
That's
They
and
kind of flow by.
200 typically hour long or more. Many of them were much longer than hour long. Like that's like a lot of hours of listening. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who like sit through it all for some reason.
I think every once in a while, every once in a while, me and Mr. Johnson talk a lot behind the scenes with the Shadowcasters Network. But every once in a while, I message Mr. Johnson and I say, so you gonna end that thing one day? And it's always, the answer is always no. You said nobody seems. Hold on, I think I. Did I? Nope, I'm here, guys. Don't worry.
What's happening?
Hey, he's back. He's back.
All right, it's
I guess
fine.
Diaper
Revolution is
2
over
again.
No, I got a phone call again, and I clicked the. It's that other group that's just itching to start their show, and who'd have thought that it would have caused problems? But no, Mr. Johnson.
Bobby a beer.
Yeah. But yeah. So I think we've covered everybody's show, and we've got a little bit of time here at the end. I want to actually have some chit chat a little bit about some stuff. So what do you? This is always a fun thing for fans of the stuff that we do to hear about sort of behind the scenes stuff. And maybe I'll start with Paul here, since I started with him before and haven't heard from you in a little bit. But what are some of the challenges that you encounter while you're making your show that you think people might find interesting?
There are a lot of behind the scenes challenges that you might not think of. I pretty much have to adopt a blueprint, or some might call it a script. I don't like calling it a script because then it makes it seem like it's not improvised, but I sort of adopt a script or blueprint around what the players say, and then kind of fill in the rest of the story and music and stuff around all that. So that's really tricky to think about what to leave in, what to cut out, what's necessary, what is mentioned now that will be in an episode like 10 episodes in the future.
Right.
Really difficult to keep all that stuff in my head because I want to have a continuity. I want to make it like a cinematic experience.
Right.
But there's just so much that's said and sometimes out of character, in character. And then there's all the like social media stuff, website stuff, posting stuff,
Oh boy.
sound effects stuff. It's just, there's a lot of threads to come together for each episode. Like each episode is its own unique challenge in many ways.
Yeah, and your stuff is really, the audio quality is really good. I really enjoy listening to the stuff that you put together, so I know a lot of work goes into that. But you said something about improvising that really struck me for a second, because in a lot of ways, when you're doing an actual play that you're producing for, and I know not all of us are doing actual plays, but a lot of us are. When you're doing an actual play that you're producing for entertainment, that's a little bit different than just playing a game, a home game, right? Like, or at least it can be, because when you make that shift from we're just hanging out together and playing a game to let's put this out for other people to listen to, suddenly you start thinking about like entertainment value and everything. Is that something that well, on NeoScum, do you guys think about that actively, or is that like a thing that you just after the fact? I don't know how much editing or not that, for example, you do, or if you're just like is there discussion behind the scenes? I know I've done some myself where there's discussion behind the scenes, like we're going to take it in this direction, and then we're going to go and just play on top of that. How much of that do you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a good bit of like behind the scenes stuff. And what's funny is like some of it ends up in the podcast, and it really. So, I mean, first and foremost, Casey Tony is our editor, and he just like he's on the podcast, but he's also constantly like just paying attention to everything, and he's really like a wizard at it. He puts so much effort into like finding the right cuts, and even just like cutting like and little stutters out to make the audio like smooth to the final product. But it is funny, like the thing we always laugh about is that like we'll be talking about some boring negotiation or like checking the rule book or something, and then someone will make a joke and the joke is too funny and we keep making the joke as like calling back that previous instance. So what ends up happening is you have to keep the boring part of it in the podcast because otherwise no one's going to know like what the hell we're laughing about, like the whole episode for the rest of it.
Exactly. I understand that.
Which is so I think that's like super fun, but also like sometimes Casey is like, when we do that, like you guys need to like rephrase what just happened so that I can get a clean edit of what is going on. So I think from a like performative standpoint, we're all pretty good about not making it too much of like, okay, now I'm going to do this big moment. We just kind of try to go for it and like see what happens afterwards. But yeah, we do obviously have some aspects of it which are sort of like, okay, how are we going to negotiate this particular like aspect of the story?
How many of you on that show are people who are improvisers? Like that's a thing that you do outside of the show?
I think I'm the only one who's like active. I think the rest, like essentially everybody went through. We're all in Chicago, so it's and we all came sort of out of the improv scene. So everybody's done like improv at some point. But and maybe I'm stepping on some of these other guys' toes, but I am pretty sure I'm the only one who's like consistently like playing, and even I am nowhere near as active as like a lot of the people in sort of the greater Chicago improv scene. Sure.
Yeah, I think that influences. I think that makes it. I mean, this is me speaking from someone who doesn't have a lot of that experience, but it seems like that would make it easier. A lot of those unspoken rules are known probably between some of you guys about how to frame this for an audience. You know, how to do this for people who are going to be listening. You know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes it easier. We have like a shared sort of like basis we're all coming out of.
Right. But so as people like in Deniable Assets, you guys run from a script?
Yeah, we run from a script for about 98% of what we do. And
sure,
then
I mean, I guess you can never totally stick to the script. I mean, but
yeah, I mean, but we actually have a couple of episodes that were 3/4 improv, thanks to certain guests that we had on there.
Right.
I'm looking at the man with the bowler hat.
That would be Opti.
But in general, we tend to stick to a pretty solid script most of the time.
Mm-hmm. What kind of challenges do you have with that? I mean, do you have the script sitting there? How much of the editing do you do for before I ask this question?
Oh, I do all of it.
Oh, so you're the one who
I'm our main editor.
So you sit there with the script next to you while you're listening to it, and do you like, or is after it's done, do you just throw the script out and just go straight from the audio?
I do. I keep the script with me whenever I'm doing editing, mostly because there's a lot of, especially with the Tales episodes, there's a lot of audio cues, musical cues, sound effects, and all that luckily my partner likes to put in there to make sure that it fits the way that he imagined it in his head.
Right.
So yeah, I usually keep it right there beside me, and I've actually got a giant box full of our old scripts just in case for some reason I need to go back to them.
Right. Well, I hold on to it. I keep everything. So.
Oh, good. You're a hoarder too.
Yeah,
awesome.
I can relate. I can relate to that. Cassie, I've always been in awe of the amount of. We're talking about like behind the scenes sort of organizational like production stuff. Now you're not doing an actual play per se, but you do stuff. There's a ton of organization I know just from talking to you and doing what you do. How much time do you spend working on keeping the EmeraldGrid running management wise versus just running games and playing in them?
No, I'm out. I delegate.
What? That's the best.
No, I used to easily do 10 to 20 hours a week. Now I'm down to about 4 that I GM, and like I said, we have other people who delegate a lot of tasks. I have no idea between all of our game masters and other people to upkeep stuff.
How many people do you have playing in that community now?
We've been on a bit of a hiatus over time, but I think we still have a dozen GMs and 50 some players in and out.
Right.
Yeah, we've slowed down a little bit. I'm waiting to see if, as I stare at Opti, if 6th edition will be under progress in the near future.
Sixth
Don't look at me.
edition. 6th edition.
If there is a 6th edition, I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, don't scare me like that,
That's
Cassie.
fair.
I have I'm still working through
That's fair.
5th edition for all my videos.
Yeah, a lot
Right?
of my focus
I still
now
have
is
5th edition
to,
content I want to release.
So
a lot of my focus now has a lot more to do with whether the community management is both doing the streaming still for the serrated edge, and then actually making Roll20 assets to try to make it easier for those of us who play online.
yeah, that's awesome. I know I've gone on to the wiki for the EmeraldGrid to get you guys
Yeah,
have really
it's like
cool house
Joules.
rules that I
We
like
do
a
have a
lot.
lot of house rules.
Yeah, I like them a
Dealing with
lot.
a large crowd.
It helps that you have a bunch of minds working on hammering those out. So,
Oh well, and more than anything, a lot of people play testing. That can be
Well,
the hardest part. Is like all the random rules with the vampires and
right, yeah,
so.
yeah, those vampires messing up all the rules. So we're getting close to where we're gonna have to call it an end here. Not for the stream, just for these guys to get out of here. We're gonna have a whole nother part 2, so to speak. Just another group of guys. But I want to give everybody a chance to say like we've got a couple minutes, and does anybody have anything else that they want to talk about? What's your favorite thing that's happened, favorite book or thing that's happened in Shadowrun in 2018 or something like that? What about
I'll give everybody a chance to talk about that real quick, but I want to mention one more thing. It's an actual play podcast, but it's actually an Earth Dawn actual play podcast.
Yep.
Called Legends of Earth Dawn. And Earth Dawn is, depending on your view, tangentially related to Shadowrun or in Shadowrun's history. And Joules is on that podcast. Mr. Johnson is on that podcast. Myself and Rusty Zimmerman and O.C. Pritchett and a few other people are on that podcast as well. So it's totally within the Shadowrun realm, and it's pretty awesome. So give the Legends of Earth Dawn podcast a listen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a good stick.
You can see Opti's insta-filking.
Insta what?
Insta-filk. Opti is a pretty darn good insta-filker. And he's
I don't
playing
know
a
what that
bard.
means.
He's
but
playing a bard,
she's
so
saying, what does that mean?
Insta-filk it.
Insta-filker. You know, people that do kind of geeky musical parodies of songs
You
like
made that up.
Callisto. No, it's true.
that a thing?
Callisto is a parody
Well-
of Calypso by John Denver. Tom Smith does it.
Oh, okay.
Opti can do a lot of
I'm a
that on the
filker.
fly.
What do you know?
Darn skippy you are.
Filking awesome.
Yeah, that's I don't know what to think about that. Well, anyway, let's go around real fast of what's the most favorite. Anybody chime in? I guess just got distracted by something at my desk. The book that's come out in 2018. What did we have? Let's see. We had
Kill Code.
Kill
came out,
Code, Street Lethal,
Better Than Bad.
Bad.
Street Lethal.
Those were the
are,
three
like, the
source
big
books.
ones,
The rest
yeah.
of them were Shadows and Focus kind of stuff.
Better Than Bad looks awesome. Like, I haven't gotten the chance to read it, but it looks like has some cool stuff.
Well, it's better than bad, so
It is better than bad.
It's at least better than bad.
sorry, that
It's
was
good.
low hanging fruit.
Everyone wants a log. Yoga.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry.
Kill
I'm happy Kill
Code.
Code has a lot of very easy matrix rules to follow.
Kill Code changed a lot of things. Well, it didn't change a lot of things, but made things a lot easier with the Matrix, I think.
Oh man, I gotta get that.
Yeah, if you have any Matrix people at your table, please give them the first chapter of Kill Code, and they will thank.
Yep.
I've got to get
Well,
that.
to
Yeah,
be
I'll look
perfectly
into that.
honest, I've never played a Decker or Technomancer or anything dealing with the Matrix, And the only reason why I feel comfortable even trying to is because of that book. So I can't speak
Mission
enough with
accomplished, right, Opti? That's awesome.
Yeah. One thing also, at least for me, because some people can't always get into the actual play or the Shadowrun missions awesomeness that you guys did this year, because I'd love to, but I don't have the time anymore, because life sucks. But sometimes I also want to shout out the Shadowrun authors like Kevin Zarnecki, Rusty Zimmerman, Jennifer Brozick, and a lot of their stuff you can get on Kindle. So if you can't play the game or come into the missions or something like that, check it out so you can at least still get comedy effects, and they all have different flavors. So, support some of the authors so that way they can write more Shadowrun novels and you'll have more awesomeness to read.
Definitely do that. But you can definitely play Shadowrun online, Roll20. Cassie's making that easier with all the stuff that she does over there. And
3 cheers for Cassie!
Yeah, hip hip hooray. But thank you guys for coming and hanging out with me tonight for this. This was such a thing to pull together at the last minute. Me and I know Oz who's not here tonight, but he's going to be in the next, or not tonight, but right now he's going to be in the next group, was helping me organize things with this. And we did not expect so many people to be interested in coming and talking on this year-end roundup thing that we do. Next year, we will try to be prepared for so many people. So, and maybe give everybody a little bit more time. Maybe split it up into multiple days so that we can hang out for longer, like we like to do. But thank you guys for coming and hanging out for as long as you did. I'm going to go down real fast and give everybody a chance to one more time, let everybody know where they can find their stuff, and then I'm going to have us go here. Let me play my favorite outro music. The stream will be able to hear this, but not you guys. Hey. All right. If you're listening to the thing, you'll hear it in a second. But let's go around here and let everybody plug themselves again real fast before we go. Opti, where can people find you?
Neo-Anarchist.com, or on your Twitters at Neo-Anarchy-Opti, or on any of your iTunes or Podomatic catchers, Neo-Anarchist podcast.
And that's where they can find the Shadowrun Origins stuff now as well, right? On that same...
Yes, so if you search for Shadowrun Origins, then the new podcast, it's only one episode of the actual play has come out yet, so you're getting on the ground.
Right. Now, James, Deniable Assets, where can they find you?
Facebook at Deniable Assets. We also have character pages Wolf and Mr. Clean on Facebook. DeniableAssets.podbean.com, and we're considering making a Twitter, but we're really kind of on the fence.
Yeah. Well, it's a pain in the butt to keep up with. Paul at Sonic Realms.
Yeah, you can pretty much just search for Sonic Realms podcast anywhere, and you're bound to stumble into it.
That's exactly how I like to sell my stuff too. Just stumble into it, and then let it take you away. And Blair at NeoScum.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Blair_Britt, or check out NeoScum at NeoScum on Twitter. We're also at www.neoscum.com.
Yeah, and Cassie, EmeraldGrid.
Yeah, you can get Twitch TV /EmeraldGrid or Twitter /EmeraldGrid. I think we also do Patreon /EmeraldGrid, and it's all free that's there. I'm just lazy and don't like to update all three.
Do you still do fun facts, Shadowrun facts from the books on your Twitter?
But I'm pretty lazy about it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, there's.
Well, forget I said anything. Jesus.
No, the old ones are still there.
Yeah. Jesus, Lowcountry Shadows. Where can they find you?
You can find us at Lowcountry Shadows on Facebook, on Twitter. We have a Reddit, and just pretty much any of the podcatchers.
Your very own Reddit. That's fancy. We should look into that one.
Anyone can start a subreddit.
Yeah. You got the whole thing. And Joules, Seize the GM.
Yep, we are on Twitter at Seize the GM, www.seizethegm.com. We're on pretty much any podcast app you can find. And if you're going to be at Origins this year, we're going to be doing a live recording on random stuff. So come and talk to us, whatever the heck you want to do. If you just come out of a game, come visit us in Kvetch. We'll record it, and I might have a beer for you.
Ooh, I wish I was going to be at Origins now. And Mr. Johnson with the Arcology podcast, go.
Twitter is at Arcology Podcast, and arcologypodcast.com is the website. And I guess just search your various podcatchers for Arcology or Shadowrun, and you'll probably find us pretty quickly.
All right, and I am, of course, Bobby Frankenberger at Complex Action. I am on youtube.com/complexaction and at complexaction.shadowcasters.network. So thank you. I guess I'm also on Twitter at GMFunkyTown. I put all my Complex Action stuff there, but that's just my Twitter. I guess I like to say stuff on there, so I should mention it. Thank you guys for listening, and I will leave you now, and we'll take a quick 5-minute break or so before the next group comes up. So chat room, stick around. There's a bunch of people about to be here to talk to from shows like Without a Net, Original Box Set, Crit Squad, The Talent Agency, Drek Happens, Radio Free Detroit, Join the Anarchy, Violent Life. So stick around. We'll be right back. And thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good to see you, everybody. Good to see y'all.